friends and sane persons. It's Wednesday night, so that means it's time for another exciting episode of Wednesday Whimsy. My name's Kyle, and as always, Wednesday Whimsy is a short show that I do every Wednesday night, with rare exceptions. We'll talk about that in a moment. Every Wednesday night where I talk about a board game, a game-related topic, top 10 list, whatever happens to be on my mind at that time. Oftentimes it's a game that I've been playing a lot recently, and that seems to be a good thing to talk about. And in fact, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the one thing I will say is I'm going to be traveling and going to Essen next week, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to post video. But hey, we'll resume normal operations as soon as possible after I return. I'm excited to go over to Germany though, because I haven't been to Germany for a while, and I've never been to Essen, so we'll see. More to come following that. But what I'm talking about today is not Essen or my trip to Germany, but rather a brand new game called, oops, there's the light. The game is not called Oops, Where's the Light? It's called Twilight Inscription. So Twilight Inscription recently arrived. It came out mid-September, I think, and that's what we're talking about today. So what's the game about? Well, the first thing you have to know is that there's another game called Twilight Imperium, and there's a bunch of different editions. The only version I've played is the third edition, and that is a long, sprawling, very intense game that I actually don't enjoy very much. It has a tendency to kind of stall out. There's some kind of filibuster moments where you can just keep the game going for not a lot of reason. And if you sort of play to win, people get angry at you because you're shortening the game. I was never a huge fan of it. I will try it again someday, I'm sure, with the right people. Maybe it's amazing. But for me, it always felt like a bit of a behemoth that didn't add bring a lot of fun to the table. So I approached Twilight Inscription with that baggage. And it's important to know that I had that baggage as I sort of get into it. But the other thing about it is that it's a roll and write game, and I actually really enjoy roll and write games. One of these days I'll have to do a top 10 roll and writes, and because there's just a lot of fun. They're interesting games. It's a roll and write game, as you know, is a game where you will normally roll some dice, although the term is used expansively. It could be flipping cards or some other method of randomization, and then you will take a pen and mark off various things on a sheet. There's a game called Guild of Merchant Explorers that I've talked about on Wednesday that does it sort of with tokens instead of writing. But most of the time it's either an erasable pen on sort of a laminated board, or it's just a pad of paper and you're crossing stuff off with a regular pen. These have kind of come into vogue in the last several years, and it's really interesting what can be done with them. So this one is taking that sort of mechanism of roll and write and adding it to a much larger game, which is supposed to create an epic 4X exploration, extermination, exploitation, and expansion. Hey, I got them all. Sort of a large, almost a civilization type game in outer space. So that's kind of what the thematic trappings are. What we're going to talk about now is how that all works and comes together. So in the game, each player is going to have 4 different boards. I'm not going to show you all of them. I will in a picture, but you've got, this isn't one of them. That's the the scoreboard. You're going to have 4 different player sheets, and they're all going to be slightly different. There's one side that's always the same. That side's boring. And then there's another side that's always different. So you can kind of play with a bunch of different, that glare is terrible. A bunch of different player sheets. I don't know that the differences are super material. It just puts things in different places. Let's take a look here at some pictures, and I'll kind of show you what I mean. Let's see if we can't zoom in on this a little bit. There we go. So you're going to have 4 player sheets, and normally you're going to set them up in this arrangement. One is going to be navigation, one's going to be expansion, one's going to be industry. It looks like this is not in English, and one is going to be war. It doesn't really matter if it's in English or not. I can talk about it nonetheless. It's still better to have a visual aid. So you're going to set them up, and then every turn, one card is going to be revealed. And for the most part, these cards are going to be, what are they called? Strategy cards. And the strategy card is normally going to give you a certain amount of resources. Like this one gives you a green, a blue, and a pink. And I'm sure they mean something, but you've got these resources, and then you're going to select one of the sheets. So for example, if I selected the war sheet, I would then spend those resources to do things on the war sheet. Normally what you can do is cross off something. Like, for example, if I crossed off 2 of the blues, which I wouldn't be able to do with this, I could just cross off one and then hope to get another one later. This would enable me to create this particular type of ship and put it into my war zone. Most of the time, though, your very first turn of the game, you'll end up going to the navigation sheet because that kind of unlocks some more possibilities. And there, you just you're going to draw lines with the non-blue colors, and then with the blue colors, you'll circle the different planets and systems that you've reached. Whenever you circle something, that enables you to use it, usually later, although some of the sort of smaller, less important ones you can use right away. So that's kind of how it works. You're going to go through the card. Everyone kind of does this at the same time. You can pick any of the 4 sheets. You can pick the same sheet from round to round. And then after you do that, you're going to roll 6 dice. There's 3 colored dice and 3 non-colored dice. You roll them, and then they're going to give you some combination of those same 3 resources. Obviously, on the black die, they're not colored, but you've got the resources you can use. It's the same symbol, though. You're going to then use those resources on your player sheet that you've selected for the round as well. After everyone's done that, you flip a new card. Usually, it's going to be a strategy card. Occasionally, it'll be something else. There are production cards, and as you get sort of this sheet down here, as you start to fill in these columns. I wonder if we can zoom in a little bit more. I guess we can't. But as you start to fill in these columns, you'll get to underline and unlock these productions, and those will when your production comes up, you're going to have access to a wild resource, which you can spend in the future on any turn on your active sheet. You can also get a voting card. There's this Galactic Council thing, and that's going to you will have unlocked these speakers or councilmen or whatever they're called, and they're going to give you a certain number of votes. Then an agenda is put forward, and everybody votes either for it or against it. You write down how many you're voting, and then something good usually happens to the winner or bad happens to the loser. It's usually a minor thing, but it's something to focus on. And then the last one you can do is there's going to be a war card, and those are going to come up at 4 times during the game. There will be 4 wars. And you're going to look at this war sheet, and you're going to count how many dots you've filled in. So by drawing these symbols, like this symbol gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dots. You're going to count how many dots you have in one of these quadrants. And this quadrant would be against the player to my left. I'd compare whatever I have in this quadrant against the player to my right. If I have more than that person, I win the war, which means I get some sort of special resource. If I have a smaller number, then I lose the war, which means I lose a point. And that's pretty basic, right? You're just kind of going to compare the strength, and then you kind of cross off that quadrant, move on to the next one. Very basic, not really a war, but sort of some comparison of strength. Almost like Seven Wonders style, actually. So you're going to do those things. This sheet over here, just very quickly, you can unlock these planets. You have to have unlocked them over here, and then you'll cross out that planet to spend that as a resource. And this enables you to fill in rows and columns with the symbols to unlock other bonuses. They could be these speakers, or they could be these population things, which are just straight points at the end of the game. There's also special resources. Like, for example, down here, you can see I can use a particular kind of a red bug-looking special resource or 3 green resources to unlock a technology. And there's 2 technologies on every board. So there's a lot of things you can really do with usually 3 dice and then a card. Now, there are also these special dice you can unlock. One way to unlock them is down here, for example. You'll see if I spend either this planet, a planet, or this many of the pink resource, then I unlock a green die. I would then pick a sheet and mark the green die on it, and now every time I use that sheet, in addition to the 3 black dice, I can also use whatever is rolled on the one green die. And so it just gives you access to additional resources as you go along, makes some things a little bit better. Generally, the green dice give you green, the pink dice give you pink, and the blue die gives you blue. In fact, it's always that. It's just going to be 1 or 2 extra per turn. So you're going to kind of go through these. This sheet down here is a little complicated, but ultimately you're kind of trying to circle these commodities. And when you circle them, then you're going to start to fill in these columns, and these columns will get you points, of course, and then production will increase. And ultimately, whenever you kind of fill in a column or a row, you're usually going to get some amount of points. At the end of the game, there's one final war. The last round is always a war. And you're going to do that final war, total up your points, and then you're going to get points for each sheet. You add up those points and with a couple extras. On the navigation, if you make it to Mercatal Rex, which is, I get, it's like the center thing in Twilight Imperium. It's some important planet. You go there. The first person there is going to get, everyone who gets there is going to get points, but the first person will get more. And then, those are points you add on, and then there's also going to be, for each of the 4 sheets, there's going to be an objective, and it's going to be something like, I don't know, there's one that's have 12 different systems in a row all circled. So you make a path of 12 systems, circle them all. There's one that's like, cross out completely 2 planets, or have a group of 10 circled things, or fill in 6 of these bonuses. There's a variety of different, there's 3 for each sheet. And whoever gets there first is going to get the bigger bonus, and then if anyone else who does it will get more. That's kind of how it is. You add up your points from all of those sheets, and I don't actually know how many rounds there are. I'm going to guess 25. But the last round could come earlier or later. It's going to be variable by about 1 round. So whoever has the most points will win the game. So that's how that works. Let's come back here, and I'll talk about one other thing, and that is that you're going to have a series of special abilities. So each game you're going to pick a special ability, like there's this dragon character that you could be, and he lets you get resources by doing something. Or there's this one that lets you use your resources more efficiently. Or there's one that lets you get peek at the top card at the upcoming round, and then get these symbols out there on the boards which can let you do extra things. They're just going to be slight variations that are going to give you a little bit of direction. Some are probably easier to use than others. I've played with quite a few of them. I've definitely some I like more than others. But that's kind of how it goes. You've got your special ability, you've got your different sides of the board, and you've got sort of a variable structure where you never quite know what's going to come first. You could probably learn it as you went along. You'd learn sort of how many of each card is in each era, because the cards kind of come in eras 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But I have not gone to that length yet. Anyway, you kind of do all of those things, and somebody's going to have more points, and that person wins. You can also play solo, and solo is very easy. You're just going to roll the dice like normal, and then you're going to cross on this side. You're going to cross off these various things, and then it's going to activate certain conditions. You're not actually competing against this robot player. You are for the war purposes, but other than that, it's just going to take scoring opportunities away from you, and then you're trying to compete to see your highest score against some chart. But that's pretty easy solo to manage. Anyway, that's kind of how it works in at a very high level. But it's not really that much more complicated than that. It's just going to be flip a card, choose a sheet, mark off some resources, roll a die, roll the dice, and mark off more things. And then it's all going to be about how you decide to work from sheet to sheet and to use your different special abilities. So that's how the game works. Let's talk about now what makes it special. And this is a pretty special game, actually. One thing that makes the game pretty special is that there are these little player powers. There's a huge stack of them. I don't know. I haven't counted, but it looks like it's at least 20. 20 different special abilities that you could have for the game. That's going to make the game have a little bit more variety, a little bit more life to it. And a little life in a game is always a good thing. So there's a lot of different kind of things to focus on, different characters to experience. And I guess if you know Twilight Imperium. Excuse me. If you know Twilight Imperium, these characters might mean something in particular to you. But for me, they're interesting characters. It's interesting artwork, but lots of kind of different special abilities. And I always enjoy that kind of variety in the game. There's also, I mentioned earlier, the variety of the different sides of the board. So you'll always have kind of a different setup. You could use probably some of the A's, some of the B's. I don't think it really matters. But you can kind of always do something unique. And so that gives you a lot of things to explore and try in the game. Another thing that's kind of that's special and positive about the game is that the rules are pretty simple. The rule book is not long. And although when I was reading through it, I first thought it was a little bit muddled. It was like, oh, what's going on here? Once I got it out and started to play through a round, it does come with a how to play or a play and learn guide, which will take you through 4 rounds of the game and show you how everything works, which is actually a good way to learn. And then, put the game away and start over. But once I sat down and took out my pen and started circling and crossing things off, it immediately became clear. There was never really a situation where I had to wonder, what does this do? There's a great little player sheet that tells you what each icon means. I mean, most of them are obvious, but it's going to give you a summary of each icon, so you never really have to consult the rule book, although they are all laid out there if you need them. It's just very easy to learn, and it's also pretty easy to teach, right? You just sort of start playing. You tell people, all right, this turn, focus on this, and this is what you can do. Kind of like the How to Play guide, and I guess you could play 4 rounds and then go back and start. So the easy rules really help bring the game up a level, I think, in my estimation. It also has a complicated feel without being complicated. Like I said, simple rules, but you always feel like you're doing something. You always feel like, which of these 4 sheets am I going to focus on? And that can feel like a fairly significant choice, but it's an easy choice, right? It's 1 of 4. You focus on the one you want to do. And once you're there, though, the choices become a lot simpler, because they're broken up, and basically the game is broken up into 4 more manageable segments. And since you're only ever really dealing with one segment at a time, that can help you really keep things moving, yet it lets you feel like you're pretty smart and you're managing some great big galactic civilization, while what you're really doing is just focusing narrowly on 4 different things at a time, or 1 of 4 different things at a time. So I like the way that it lets you feel complicated without actually being complicated. Another thing is that it, for me, gives me the experience that I wanted out of Twilight Imperium, but in shorter than 4 hours. Right? This game is probably going to be 30 minutes is short. I'd say 45 minutes. It's going to grow with more people, obviously, but it's not that long. Maybe an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. It's long for a roll and write game, but this is, as I'll talk about in a minute, this is more of a game that uses roll and write than a roll and write game. So it has this sort of experience of this space exploration, but without taking forever and without being as complicated as other games of that type tend to be. So I really actually enjoy that. I think that's something that's particularly special and innovative about it. So let's talk about now the but. Where's the but? What's not great about this? One thing about it is, and the game does its best to help you, but there is a lot of tracking to do in this game. Because you've got 4 sheets, and because resources are on different sheets at a time, it can be occasionally a little bit difficult to remember, did I use that and forget to cross it out? Or did I not use it? And so you're kind of wondering if you've double dipped on a resource or a bonus or something. Or it's easy to forget. Oh, yeah, I do have that thing. I was waiting for one, and I've had it for 4 turns now. Right? Things are kind of spread out, and I wish there were a central way of tracking them. I guess that's something you get better with over time. I know I have. But it can be a bit of a bummer in the game if you kind of forget some amazing thing that you've had for a while and just forgot to use, but you were waiting for. So that's kind of meh. Another thing is that I said that there were 3 goals for each of the 4 sheets, so we'd be using 4 of the 12 goals in every game, and I wish there were about 3 times as many. I think the goals are going to get old pretty quickly. Same thing with the agenda cards that you're voting on. None of them is particularly exciting, and there's only, I guess, 12 of those as well. And so you're going to go through and you're going to kind of see the same ones each time. I wish there were double or triple as many of those, and I wish they had a bigger impact. It's usually gain a resource or lose a point or something like that. It's never. There's reasons to focus on it, but they're not because of the agenda. They're because of the points you can get from getting those little counselor figures. Also, the game takes kind of a lot of table space, right? With 4 sheets, and those 4 sheets are all, I don't know, kind of slightly smaller than an 8.5 by 11. But, you got 4 of these setting up, and it ends up being a pretty big player board. Also, they don't all, they kind of spin and move as you write on them, but that's okay. I would sacrifice the sort of fixed board for the opportunity to have more variety any day. I just wish maybe there were a holder that kind of held them all in place. I don't know. But the real issue is that it takes up a lot of table space, which is a lot for a roll and write game. You don't usually come into this kind of game and expect that it's going to take a big table. And then comes my one biggest problem with the game. And it is not a game design problem. It is a component problem. These markers, they're pretty nice, right? They write really well. For example, let me see if I can show you. Right, they're it's a chalk marker, and the orange stands out pretty nicely on this board. So you can. Well, I'm drawing a really straight line, but you can easily see what you've marked off, which is a good thing. They're very functional, and they help you keep track of things, but they are a huge pain to clean. I mean, you need to take a paper towel and really thoroughly rub this thing down at the end of every game, or it's going to build up a bunch of gunk. And it just does not come off very easily. I really wish the game were a little easier to clean. And that's kind of a problem. And then also, this is orange kind of chalky dust. So it's going to make your fingers look like you've been eating Cheetos at the gaming table. And you're going to have to go wash your hands after you play this. Again, I don't know that there's a solution. The solution would be to get paper sheets and cross stuff off, but then that would mean the box would weigh a ton, and I don't know. That's kind of wasteful. But I don't know. I just wish that these were a little bit easier to clean up after you've played the game. The cleanup is not a satisfying experience at all. But I don't fault the game for that. That's just more a physical limitation. I don't know. I don't have a better solution, so I guess I'll let that one go. So what's my final rating? Well, my final rating, I wanted to talk about something before I give the final rating, and that is that this is one of a very select few games that are games that feature roll and write. Back in the day, a game came out called Dominion, and it was deck building, right? And after that, there were a whole bunch of deck building games. And the game was all about building, culling, constructing the contents of your deck to get some sort of points and reach some sort of victory. And then, after a couple of Dominion copycats came out, better games started coming out that were using these mechanisms to do new and different things. For example, Clank, one of my favorite deck building games, it does something different. You are building up your deck, and you are going to get points from it, but you're using it to move around this dungeon. It's a game that involves deck building. Same with things like Root Last Ruins Varnak or Dune Imperium. These are games that use deck building mechanisms, but use them to drive a bigger game. And that is what Twilight Inscription does for roll and writes, right? It's one of just a few games that are really games first and then using this mechanism separately. Roam and Roll is another one, and I might even put Hadrian's Wall in that category, where there's just a whole lot more going on than just rolling the dice and crossing off symbols. Now, That could be a plus for some people and a minus for others. If you want, most people think of these roll and write games, they're thinking 20 minutes, you roll some dice, you mark a sheet, you're done, you had a good time. This game is not that. This game is going to be a deeper and more involved experience than your Ganshun Clever or your whatever else, with the dice sort of exploding off the box. And so I want to make sure I say that up front. For me, this game's an 8 out of 10. I really enjoy it. I'm about to go on a trip, and I'm thinking of taking it with me just because it's light. It's not a very big box. I mean, physically light. It's not a very big box, and so I think, I probably could play it with people and have something, before I get to Essen in case I need a game, need a quick fix. I think this might be one that I would, put on my games potentially to travel with. And also I can play it alone, so that means if I'm, alone in a hotel room, hey, I've got something to do. Huzzah. Now, I come at this game not having loved the game that it's based on, the bigger Twilight Imperium game. And I think that's a plus. From what I've heard, people who come in loving Twilight Imperium are let down by this game. So I kind of, for me, this was much better than I thought it would be. I was worried it was going to be long and complicated, and I wasn't really going to like it, but I actually ended up liking it quite a bit. I think this will definitely show up if I do my top 10 roll and write games. Easily, I can easily see that happening, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been what I've come home and wanted to play for the last week or two, and that's saying something because I've got a lot of games. Anyway, 8 out of 10 for me. Definitely one to try. I would love an app version of this. That would be so fantastic. But hey, I guess we got to wait and see. I also would love it if a couple expansions came out that didn't change much but added more of those agendas and goal cards, objectives, whatever they're called. But for me right now, out of the box, 8 out of 10, highly recommended, definitely worth your time. Just go into it with the right level of expectations. And that's all I will say on the matter. So with that, that's another Wednesday Whimsy in the books. I will hopefully come back with lots more games and more ideas and things to talk about after my trip to Germany. But until then, for me and for you, safe travel. I wish you safe travels, courage when you need it, and all the best, and see you on another Wednesday. All right. Bye-bye.